Okay, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Women of Flexo's Lunch and Learn with our speaker, Rebecca Casey. Next slide.
I'd like to introduce the two co-chairs. We have Jenny Scott, who's the VP of Creative Services at Berry Global, and myself, Nona Woolbright, professor at Clemson University. Next slide, please.
So I like to try to start these meetings off with a little motivation, I guess, as well. And this one actually is labeled a little incorrectly. It's not actually live from me. I did catch it off the internet, but I thought it was kind of impactful for today's meeting. One woman can make a difference, but together we can rock the world. And I think that's a pretty awesome statement. So looking forward to the presentation today, and hopefully it's going to be beneficial for everybody as well too on the call. Next slide.
Okay, so the agenda today is that we're going to talk about the Women of Flexo. We're going to introduce our speaker, and then she's going to do her presentation, Rebecca Casey. We're going to get some updates from the leadership team, and then we'll go into Q&A. Next slide.
Nona, before we talk about the Women of Flexo, would you like to introduce our guest speaker for a moment?
Sure. I think we have a whole slide on that though, don't we?
Well, actually, Mark, sister.
Oh, I forgot about Mark. Sorry. My bad.
Wow, forgot me.
There's not a slide. Oh, okay. Anyway, we'd like to introduce Mark Cisternino, who's the president of FTA, who wanted to just speak to us for just a moment.
Thank you very much, Nona and Jenny. Yeah, I don't want to take up a lot of time. I just want to kind of recognize this initiative as being an extremely important endeavor for FTA in our current business plan. In a very short period of time, this group has really made a strong impact on the organization and the industry. And I commend everybody that's involved in bringing it forward. It's something that we've known for a long time, based on the direction the industry is taking, that Women of Flexo really have a strong impact on the future of the industry. So I'm really excited at the progress you all are making. I commend Nona and Jenny for their leadership. It's also important to point out that on the FTA and FFTA boards, we have Jenny Scott is board chair-elect for FTA. Jean Engelke is board chair for the foundation. Laura Wright is FFTA board chair-elect. So 3 of the 4 top leaders in our organizations are Women of Flexo members. So that's very important to us. Also serving on the board is Kim Madigan and Kristen Shields, again, members of this organization. So I think it's something that I really look forward to seeing the progress that the group makes, and you know, what it's going to bring to our industry and our organization. So keep up the good work. That's all I can say. So thank you for allowing me to say a few words, and I look forward to the presentation today.
Great, thanks, Mark. Appreciate the comments. So getting back to our slideshow here, just to elaborate on what the Women of Flexo is about, our mission and vision statement includes Women of Flexo is comprised of industry members who work to support and promote women in flexographic industry through a variety of opportunities. And I know we continue to work on our website all the time, so please take a look at that at womenofflexo.org to learn more about it. Next slide.
Okay, so here's the slide about our speaker. So I'm going to introduce Rebecca. Rebecca Casey is the VP of Marketing and Consumer Market Development for TC Transcontinental Packaging. She leads and coaches a high-performing cross-functional team responsible for the execution of marketing and business strategy, as well as the design, development, and commercialization of products that maximize shareholder value. Ms. Casey has 22 years of experience and has held numerous positions in the chemical and packaging industry. Rebecca has worked with many of the top 500 Fortune 500 consumer product companies, commercializing new products, driving intuitive, collaborative innovation, and identifying growth segments through the translation of consumer trends and market insight. Rebecca is passionate about identifying how a package communicates the product and the brand to its consumer, and how creating the perfect packaging experience can transform the way people engage, shop, and buy. She also believes strongly in workplace diversity and inclusive thinking to drive results and faster change. She serves on the board of directors for the Packaging Consortium, as well as the PMMI Women's Network Committee. Ms. Casey holds a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry from the University of Illinois and an MBA from Northern Illinois University in Marketing, and was recently nominated as one of the Women Breaking the Mold for 2019 by Plastic News. So you take it away, Rebecca.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here with all the ladies from the Women of Flexo. I wanted to thank Katie Graham as well as the leadership team for inviting me to speak to you today about strengths and advancing yourself forward in your career. I'm going to just use a lot of my different experiences throughout my 22 plus years in the chemicals and packaging industry to tell you some of the challenges I've had, as well as some of the things that you can do individually to advance yourself in your career, or even in some of your personal goals that you'd like to achieve. So next slide. So first, one of the things I think about quite often to myself is this quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, that no one can make me or you feel inferior without your consent. So I really believe that we are the owner of our own confidence, and it does take work to keep your confidence built and also to build on your confidence. So my first bullet point is embrace your imperfections. We all have things that we can improve on, and I find embracing those imperfections actually makes me better at my strengths. I typically focus on my strengths, but utilize my imperfections as well when dealing with my team or actually other people in order for them to embrace their strengths. Next bullet point, who said you can't? I think a lot of times we're faced with things in life where people imply that we can't do a certain function or do a certain task. I try to reflect on always using the word can. And if somebody says that I can't, I typically try to work around either that person, or I actually approach them and ask them why they think I can't. And I think it's one of the important things of building your confidence is to kind of rise up and ask those questions when somebody implies that you can't do something. Put yourself out there. If you don't put yourself out there and try something new, or take a challenge on that you may feel you're not ready for, you're never going to know if you can do it. So I think that's part of building your confidence as well, is to make sure that you put yourself out there. Take a risk and say yes. One of my favorite books that I read during Christmas break was The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. And she really talks about throughout her career how she always said no to any invitation that she would receive. So she set herself up for one whole year to say yes to all the invites or opportunities that came in front of her. So attending different conferences or networks, just like you're doing today, saying yes to a new project, saying yes to presenting if you don't feel comfortable. I think this is a really great book that gives examples of challenges she faced as an individual, a woman, as well as a Black producer in an industry that typically is more male dominated, on how she faced those challenges just by using one word, yes. Surround yourself with people who support you. You know, there's always somebody who's going to back you up, and you really have to look for that network to support you, to give you guidance. I think the Women of Flexo has a great mentorship program that you can get engaged with and find a mentor, and I recommend doing that. And then one of the last bullet points I want to mention is your personal brand. You know, people laugh when they say, oh, do you have an elevator speech? But I think it's very important to know who you are, both personally and professionally, and how you can communicate that out to someone that you meet, particularly if you're in a networking situation. Who do you stand for? What do you believe in? And what contributions do you give, not only to your organization, but into the industry or even to your local community that you want to communicate out? Next slide, please. So talking about your strengths, I always say it's important to do two buckets when you look at your strengths, as well as accepting your weaknesses. And I lay out every year my goals and my objectives, but I also lay out in one bucket the things that I've strengthened and the things that I'm weak at. Very similar to what you would do in a business plan for a SWOT analysis. And I always build my plan around how am I going to move those weaknesses to a strength for myself. And as I grow in my career, as I grow personally in my life with my family and try to do work-life balances, I see different weaknesses come up throughout my career, or something that was a strength when I was younger may become a weakness when I'm as I've advanced in my career. So, you know, the strengths, when you lay out your two bucket lists between strengths and weaknesses, just really when you focus on your strengths, things that come very easily or naturally. You're energized by doing it. The things that we love to do typically are always our strengths. And when you reflect on it, it also benefits something or someone greater than yourself. So I really want to look at the strengths that I have that can contribute to other people's careers or to my community or to my family. Weaknesses, they can always be improved on. A weakness, as I mentioned, can always become a strength. Don't dwell on them. I think a lot of times we focus too much on what we're not good at instead of pushing towards what we're great at doing. And as I mentioned, see them differently. Don't see them as a negative. See them as something that you can change to a positive. You want to always validate, and I think I mentioned this earlier, find a mentor or a sponsor. A lot of organizations don't have mentoring or sponsoring programs, and that's why I think it's great that the Women of Flexo or that the FTA has created the Women of Flexo and allows you to have this type of mentorship program when so many companies are trying to implement a mentor program or sponsorship for women, but might not have, you know, the resources to do it. And sometimes I really like to have the perspective of someone outside of my own company to support me in difficult times, to help me with a challenging situation through advice. And I find it very important to validate both my strengths and weaknesses and review those with my mentor on a every month basis on this is my goal and this is what I'd like to achieve, and have someone talk that through with me. Form a network and a circle of trust. I like using the terminology, my own personal board of directors. Not only my friends and family, I have a board of directors group here at work, and I also have some on my personal life that help to support and navigate me through situations with my family, and also to help me navigate through managing my time. So I think it's really important to form a network, not only from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective. And then just try new things. Like I mentioned, if you don't try new things, you're not going to be able to move anything to the strengths. And sometimes it's hard to understand your weaknesses if you don't put yourself out there. I think next we have a polling question for the group. What areas would you like to challenge yourself for personal improvement or development? I'm not sure if we're going to see the results of the polling as we go. Do we see that, Katie? Oh, learning a new skill is the top. I thought this was an interesting polling question for everyone to look at, because it's quite interesting that in reality, it's pretty split, that everybody is wanting to do the same types of improvements. And I think that's even better when we talk about mentorship and networking, is that when you discuss these different areas of improvement to get an understanding of what other people are trying to do, helps you to come up with ideas and goals and objectives to try to meet this development objective that you'd like to have. So on to the next slide. Katie, please. So authenticity is essential. Sorry about that. So I think this is very simple, and it seems simple, I should say, and seems like it would come very natural, but we're put in challenging situations all the time where we feel like that we have to bend a little bit to live up to other people's expectations. And I think it's really important that you're always doing the right thing for you, and really looking for meaning in your everyday work. Because if you don't feel like you have meaning in the work that you're doing, it really is difficult to get up in the morning and to really enjoy what you're doing and really feel like you're contributing. You know, get better at being you. Like when we reflect on the thoughts that we have around judgment, we have to feel very secure with ourselves about just being who we are, and not to change based off of cultural, or in some cases, political aspects that are happening at our workplace. I find that if you're true to yourself, it'll come through, and people will recognize your opinions, and they'll recognize why you're standing up for what you're standing up to. And sometimes you have to live with the consequences. I have had in my career where I've stood up for something that I completely believed in and stood up for individuals and their contribution to the organization. And it has caused me to have to change positions and leave an organization because what I believed in did not align with what the leadership team believed in. And just being true to yourself, it can be difficult sometimes because we all have goals and objectives we want to achieve in our career aspirations. And sometimes we feel we have to be somebody different than who we really are in order to be accepted or in order to fit in with the different cultures that we have in our organization. I'm very lucky to work for TC Transcontinental Packaging. We have a great leader who believes in diversity for women and who have built programs as well as measurements in order for women to be able to grow within the organization and to balance our leadership and diversity so that there is that inclusive thinking within our organization. And it does allow me to be very authentic about who I am and the contributions I can make to our organization. Next slide. Being assertive. So take credit for the stuff that you have accomplished. I think it's hard for women. We don't necessarily point out the things that we've accomplished. And we also struggle when pointing out that the work that was accomplished was our work when someone else might have taken credit for that. I think it's very important for us to do that. Reinforce your thoughts and ideas when you're interrupted. There's a tendency for women not to speak up when they've been interrupted and their thoughts have not been fully heard. So there's easy ways to just say, after you've been interrupted, to say, I'd like to come back to that thought I was having. And sometimes it's okay after a meeting, if somebody has interrupted you, to have a one-on-one conversation with that person, because most of the time it's not intentional for someone to interrupt you, and it ends up being one of their weaknesses that they need to address. So I'm pretty upfront a lot of times when I feel a person has interrupted me a few times in a meeting to address that one-on-one after the meeting closes. If you don't ask, you don't get. So I find that women, when it's time, when there's a job opening or you're thinking about a career change or going to a new organization, that we feel we have to be 100% ready for that job. And I too, I think it's just common. I have had that thought for many years. And now I've realized that 25% of a job, you have to have the know-how. 75% of it is really about the experience. And if you have a strong enough network, you can go out to many people when you get into a situation that maybe you're not an expert in, to find some help. And if you're very resourceful, you can also, study on that. Typically, and you can see from studies that say, men usually are about 60% ready for a job and they're throwing their hat in. So I think we have to be a little bit more aggressive in regards to advancing in our careers by just applying for the job. It's not always about being liked. I'm sure there's many people who have disagreed with me, and you know, I feel it's very important to have a voice, even if your voice is different, because the outcome can be better for the organization. And learn to play in your gray spaces. And this really means I have a voice when I'm the expert at the table on that particular subject. And when I'm not the expert, I know when to, you know, not to inject within the conversation and to listen and to learn. So this is a really important tactic that I think you learn throughout your career, when it's time to listen and when it's time to inject your opinion or your ideas. And I think that's just part of learning, but it's an important area that you have to try to understand that gray space. And then balance, stand up for yourself and your rights and others' rights and beliefs. And I think I mentioned that earlier. Sometimes there can be consequences to that. And then the next slide, please. One of the things that I want to leave with you today is the word intentional. I think it's really important, really, not only professionally, but personally, to be intentional. We are so busy all the time, and I find now that many are working from home, or we're using Zoom, for example, a lot more, that there just seems to be less time to be intentional about everything that we're doing. So I think you just need to be deliberate about trying to, you know, learn that new skill. You have to be conscious of your environment around you and those cues that you should be listening to. I think you need to be purposeful, setting objectives and goals. One of the things that I do as well during the holiday season when I have some time off is to build my goals and objectives for the next year. And they're very balanced. I have my career aspirations, my community aspirations, my things that I want to do from a personal development, like my spirituality. I also have things that I want to do with my son that I put on those, just to make sure that I have a good balance in between my work and my personal life. And I reflect on that as well daily to see if I'm moving forward with those goals. And then just being studious and willing and as I mentioned, really planned, and, you know, making sure that you take that 15 or 20 minutes every day to intentionally think about what you as an individual want out of your personal and your professional life. I also mentioned some books at the bottom of the presentation that I really enjoyed reading, and I try to reflect on these, the four of these books throughout the year, just as a reminder so that I don't get stuck in my everyday life, or when I'm not feeling as confident, to go back and to read through these books and realign myself. So I want to thank everybody today. And I know we're going to have a section for questions, and I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Rebecca. Very appreciate the information today. You know, a lot of the information I feel is stuff we hear a lot, but it's always good to continue to hear it again from a different standpoint as well too. Nona, before you go into the subcommittees, I wanted to remind everybody as well, as if you have any questions for Rebecca or for anybody on the subcommittees, There is a Q&A button at the bottom. If you would like to put your question in there, that would be great. And then we will review those here at the end after we go through the subcommittee updates as well. So with that, Nona, do you want to lead us into the next slide?
We have 4 working groups that are working to move us forward in our goals and objectives, our mission and our vision. And they are the leadership and diversity, and they're working towards increasing female representation on panels and speaking, and in industry leadership roles. We have recruitment, which is trying to coordinate with schools and find members and grow our network as women. Marketing and strategy, increasing awareness of our group and defining our long and short-term goals. And then our mentorship group, which is trying to do exactly what Rebecca talked about, making us all feel like we have someone we can turn to when we need help. So those are just an overview of those, and we're going to let each one of those groups report to us about what they've been doing recently. So next slide.
Okay, so for the leadership diversity group, I'm not sure, Alyssa, if you're on, or Flora, you're going to give an update on what you guys are working on?
Hi, this is Laura from CSW, and I'll be giving an update on this committee.
Perfect.
There are 4 of us on this subcommittee: Nicole Anesti from PCMC, Alyssa Denny from Great Northern Corporation, myself, and Alicia Gibson from McDermott Graphic Solutions. Yeah, next slide, please. So the goal of the Leadership Diversity Subcommittee is to increase female representation on panels and speaking opportunities and industry leadership roles. And one way that we're doing this is by managing a database of these opportunities and promoting them to women in Flexo. So it's about making you aware of what opportunities are out there for you. We'll be inventorying not only FTA opportunities, but also opportunities with other associations. And we'll also be working to create new speaking and writing opportunities using various media. These activities should help create visibility and awareness for young professionals as they plan their careers, and also support recruitment of women into leadership roles within the industry. One of the things that you'll see us doing soon is spotlighting individual women in the industry, short written piece that you'll see through the FTA and through this group, just exhibiting women who have taken leadership roles and what they've accomplished and how they've gotten there. We hope to invite women's involvement and also to confirm that they have value, that there's value in what they have to share by taking an active leadership role. So that's what we're about.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, the next subcommittee is recruitment. And I believe, I'm not sure if Linda's on the call or not, but if not, Kristen, could you give us an update?
I'm sorry, I don't have anything prepared because I thought Linda was speaking and just found out like 5 minutes ago that she's not.
No problem. We can
So,
just go through the recruitment slide there if you would like.
okay. Yeah, so basically we're coordinating with the different schools and trying to build a database of schools that have programs where we could educate women on the Flexo industry and the opportunities that are available within our industry. So, we've been reaching out, trying to, it's been a little hard with COVID though. So
I told you.
We're a little unorganized.
That's what we asked for.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I think recruitment's going to be, it's interesting as you can imagine coming out of college and then trying to get into the industry and being able to have a group that kind of helps welcome you in. I think is going to be very, very beneficial, I think, for a lot of the college graduates as well. So looking forward to seeing where this subcommittee moves as well too. So, okay, Nona?
Yeah, On to marketing and strategy, and Kara's going to talk to us about what they've been up to.
Hi, I'm Kara Wanowski with the Marketing and Strategy Committee. The ladies in our group is Heather Buckles from Sun Chemical, Kayla Rogers from Clemson University, and Katie Tuckler from DuPont. So the goals of the marketing committee, like Nona said, is to increase awareness of the group and defining its long and short-term goals. We're working towards these goals by creating the messaging and leveraging the website and social media to expand awareness about our group and to get more women involved. So we've started working very closely with each of the other subcommittees so that we can offer our support and give each committee the tools that they need to reach their individual goals. We've created an organization-wide content calendar where we can all plan content posts and virtual events without too much overlap, and just making sure that everybody in our organization is on the same page. And that just makes it easier to properly plan and execute all of the Women of Flexo's promotion. Yeah, so that's what marketing has been up to lately.
Okay. Next slide, yeah. And then our final group is mentorship, and we're going to have Emily from McDermott talk to us about what's going on there.
Awesome, thanks Nona. Yeah, so we have on the committee with myself, we have Jean Engelke, Amy Golden, Betty Lynn Kraft, and Catherine Haynes. Next slide, please. So our goal, as mentioned previously, is developing relationships between members new to the industry and those with experience. And I think Rebecca just hit the nail right on the head with her presentation of what we're going for, what we're aiming for with our mentorship program. And it's always just so great to hear people share their positive experiences with taking part in mentorship. So I just really loved that, Rebecca, and thank you for joining us today and saying yes to the opportunity to be our presenter. So in case you missed, in case you didn't have the chance to join us for the first one, for our first webinar, last time we were asking for people to join in on our mentorship program, and we were super fortunate and we had 13 pairs come out of it. So we're really excited for that, for our 13 pairs to be our first group to go through this program. And yeah, we're just honestly so excited about that. We've got some really great feedback from some of the women participating too, which is also great. And yeah, in the spirit of using this program, the mentorship program, as a tool for women to grow themselves both personally and professionally, we're hosting a virtual welcoming happy hour for this year's participants, so they can meet each other and they can meet us on the mentorship committee. And we're hoping we can just all use this as an opportunity to build up our network and treat this time together as an open platform to ask questions and be able to support each other. And aside from the one-on-one mentorships, we're gearing up to get our student groups kicked off soon. We're aiming for the beginning of September, and we're also all super excited about those. And that's all that I have for updates for the mentorship group.
Okay, great. Thank you, ladies, for giving us an update on the subcommittees. Right now, we're going to turn over to questions, and we do have a few questions that came in. One of the questions came through anonymously, and it's probably a question maybe for Rebecca, because I think you kind of talked a little bit about this during your presentation, but any tips to overcome the experience paradox, where you have to have experience to get experience, no amount of education or related work ever satisfies the question when seeking a new job, what does it really mean? And I know you made a comment during your presentation that a lot of times about getting a job, 25% is knowing it, but 75% is experience. So that does kind of put us in a little bit of a box here, especially coming straight out of college. Rebecca, do you have any feedback about that?
Yeah, the interesting thing is like once you get into an organization, I think you have to raise your hand for projects, and you might tell your boss or that you would like to get experience in X, Y, and Z. So if you're in marketing, it might be finance, and that you'd like to take a role within that project sitting next to a finance person to learn some of that information. Now that's a big drastic jump between marketing and finance. But the other things I did early on in my career is I worked with volunteer.org. And if you go there, I did it, one, because I wanted to have some balance and to also contribute, but I would ask to take on roles on volunteer.org that might have given me experience to put onto my resume. I started my career in sales and wanted to move into the marketing role and felt like I needed to have some marketing experience outside of just getting my MBA in marketing, and that's what I did. So that would be a suggestion for an opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Another question that came through was just a general question about if you could send the list of books out. And I think, Katie, we could probably put that together and get that sent out maybe for the, maybe an email blast after the meeting is over, possibly. We'll definitely get those books out to everybody as well, because I did looking into them. It looked like there's a lot of good information there, which is awesome. Okay, another question. In regards to playing in the gray space, any suggestions of what to think about when deciding whether to pipe in and contribute versus when to listen? Rebecca, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think when you, the piping in is typically when you are you know the facts, right? You're the expert in that area. I find that there's a tendency for people who don't know my space, so I lead the marketing and strategy, that they have a tendency to pipe in my area where they don't necessarily know, I guess, what they're talking about. So as I mentioned, if I'm not the expert and I have ideas, I typically keep those for later and address them directly with the person who is the subject matter expert. Or I'll just say, you know, if you don't mind, I'd like to comment on some ideas that I have. And then I'll bring up the ideas. But typically, if I'm not the expert, I ask permission to contribute to the conversation. And that's how I handle it.
Great, thank you very much.
But I think with the gray spaces, it's definitely different. I think I just want to make one more comment. Sorry, like you have to, even advance in some ways, have a conversation with not have a conversation with your boss, but you have to learn the cues for you to play on and play off with your boss as well. I think that's very important to know. Those types of cues, and it's really, you know, learning your manager, and in some cases, you know, maybe having conversations afterwards, because a lot of times I find my managers have always said, well, why didn't you mention that during the meeting? And that also helps to build your confidence to insert yourself when you have an idea or any kind of fact.
Great answer. Another question that came through, and maybe this might go to Emily. Is it too late to join, I believe it's the mentorship program, as a mentee?
Yeah, sure. So I think that from what we've talked about in our group, I think that since this is our first year, we're trying to keep it pretty small and keep it to a smaller number, just to make sure that we have our reins on it. But maybe we look at it again in about 6 months or so, and we can see if we can expand.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then one more question. And again, feel free to ask a question if you have one. And even if it's not necessarily for Rebecca, but for someone on the panelist, be glad to help answer it as well too. So the last question I have here says, I have experience. I have done multiple roles in my organization. I am always the person they come to fill in a pinch. How do I get them to let me move up in the organization? Rebecca, any suggestions?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if anyone else was going to answer. So, this is one thing that I didn't put onto the presentation, but you know, I think this is an issue with a lot of people. We always say yes to a lot of things. I think it's important to say yes when it brings value, but sometimes we have to say no too. One, if you're overloaded, which I find happens often to me because I said yes, but I think you personally, you just have to reflect on why everyone is coming to you. And when you do your standard performance review, you have to lay out all of the different projects and all the times you said yes and contributed to the organization that really builds your case for that promotion. Because a lot of times people don't necessarily recognize it because it's very natural for them to go to you, for you to lend a helping hand and get something done for a timeline. It's really your job to point it out to your manager that I've done X, Y, and Z, and a lot of this is not really my responsibility to do, but I'm a great team player. And it's, you know, again, you have to ask, it's time for me to, you know, I would like to advance my career.
Great answer. And yeah, and sometimes too, being in a company for a long time, sometimes you might need to move, get out to get it to another opportunity as well too. So
yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah.
Anybody else
Could I just
think about that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is Laura Wright. I just wanted to say that timing is also important, particularly if you're being asked to do a project that may be outside of your normal area, but is in an area that you would like to advance into. Of course, it's very, very important that you really do a great job in whatever they're asking to do. But once you've done that, don't be afraid to toot your own horn and go right to your manager and say, hey, I think I did a great job on this. This is something that I'd like to do more of. Is there any way you can help me advance in this area? Don't let the opportunity pass.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate the feedback. Any other comments about that one? Okay, 2 more questions came through about the mentorship program, Emily. It seems to be a very popular one, which is great. Obviously, we need a lot of mentors and mentees out there. Can you offer more details around how your mentorship program is structured, and is there a waiting list for the mentorship program, or how can we stay in touch to find out about future opportunities?
Great questions. Thanks, Jenny. So as far as the first question goes, can I offer more details around how the mentorship program is structured? The way that we have laid it out so far, again, this is our first year, so we're learning along with our mentors and mentees. So far what we're doing is we've had a registration form online, and we have people fill it out and say whether they want to be a mentor or a mentee. And then what we've been doing on our end of things is we'll take a look at who we have available for mentors and mentees and see if, you know, who would be a good fit. And since, you know, we're all very spread out across the world, and also we're all living in a virtual, you know, community at this point in time, it's pretty much all, at least for right now, it's all online. So we've been recommending that people get together once or twice a month for an hour, couple hours, whatever best fits them. And yeah, once we pair you up with someone, we send out kind of like a little guide with tips and tricks and handouts for like how to structure your mentorship to get the most out of it. And yeah, we've had some great feedback for it so far. But I think if I'm not mistaken, I think everyone has been doing it, you know, over video chatting, phone calls. And then for the, I hope I answered that well. If I didn't, feel free to pop another question in. As far as the waiting list goes, I think we're still trying to get a handle on how to do it. So as far as finding out how to stay in touch about future opportunities, I would say just keep an eye on the LinkedIn page. If you're not a member of our Women of Flexo group on LinkedIn, let us know. We can absolutely add you to that. And then as things change, we can blast it out on there. And then just future webinars that we have, we'll give updates as things progress. And then in regard to the waiting list, we don't have a formal waiting list, but I would say if you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee, we just put together like a group email address. So it's womenoflexomentorship@gmail.com. It'll be on the contact page at the end of this presentation. But if you're interested, just shoot us an email and say that you're interested, and we'll keep a log of it. But other than that, we'll try and blast some stuff out online once we get a better idea of how we want to navigate through the year.
Great, thank you very much, Emily. Again, I know, like you said, this is our first year with it, so we're still working through some of the stuff and the details and stuff too. So yeah, just bear with us on that. That'd be great. Another question came through in another alternative way. How do you, it kind of goes along with the gray spaces too, so Rebecca, you might be able to help answer this one as well. How do you respond to someone coming over into your space when they are not a subject matter expert in your area?
Well, my recommendation is always to do it one-on-one, never in a group environment. So if it happens when you're in a meeting with a group, always address it on the outside, because it's kind of a personal, to me, it's a personal topic, really, even more than a professional, even though it's happening at work. So, you know, I think you just have to be direct and very factual, and start with a fact, and then kind of take that question back to that person. So you state your fact, and then you ask, you know, am I seeing this right? Or did I misunderstand the way it happened in the meeting? And then that is like an open question for them to respond, because sometimes, you know, it's not intentional, and you don't want to address it like aggressively up front without stating your fact or your opinion, because you don't want to break that relationship. There's a class that I took early on in my career called Crucial Conversations. Sometimes companies offer it, but I know you can take it offline on yourself, and there's actually a book that I think is really great that helps you to lay out those conversations that are more crucial that you have to have. And that's really how they lay it out, by stating your fact, asking the person the question, and giving them time to answer, because, you know, you don't want to make a lot of assumptions too.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Anybody else have any feedback on that question as well? Okay. All right, and then we have another question here. Any advice on how to be prepared and ready to approach negotiations when offered a promotion? I think a lot of us have this kind of question as well too.
Well, this is where it's tough for not just women. I think it's tough for men too, but we have a tendency to underestimate what we can get. So I think it's about laying out the value you bring to the organization and setting that negotiation just like you would a business negotiation, higher than what you really want to achieve. And you know, if you have if you're ready for that promotion and that's what you're in there to talk about, there's a value you bring to the organization as well, and you have to have that confidence. And I find I always go in higher because there's going to be a middle point, even for your boss to have that win-win feeling during a negotiation. So set your objectives high and know where you're going to feel satisfied, because when you get a promotion and you don't achieve from that growth where you want to, that too can cause, you know, job dissatisfaction.
Great,
I
thank
don't know
you.
if anyone else has any comments on experience they've had with negotiation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that response, Rebecca. Appreciate that. So we're on to our last question, but if you still have any questions, feel free to put them in. And next question I think might be for Katie. Was today's presentation recorded, and will it be sent out to anyone who signed up for today for sharing purposes?
It was recorded, and we will share it. It will be posted to the Women of Flexo website, and we can also share that link in a future email. So yes.
Yeah, as well as if anyone has any questions for me, or if I can support you, I don't mind if anybody ever reaches out to me as well with questions, or if other questions come up.
Great. Okay, Nona?
Yep. So we're going to conclude by thanking you all for coming today and being part of our group. And if you want to find out more about Women of Flexo and how to get involved, make sure you visit our website. Feel free to email any of the leaders of any of the 4 subcommittees, and make sure you pay attention to our LinkedIn group, because we're excited about some of the things that are going to be coming up in the future. We want as many people involved as possible. I think that's it for us.
Yes. Yep. Thanks again, Rebecca. It was a great presentation, and I hope everybody got
Thank
something
you.
out of it. And stay tuned for our next Lunch and Learn.